caught in the crossfire. It's caught in the...
What's up, guys? Lance, Obscure Movie Guy, coming to you once again with another fun-filled, fact-filled video that you probably won't care about, but we're going to do it anyways, trying to change the world one post at a time. And today we're going to be talking about a specific independent filmmaker that has reached out to me a few months back, wanted me to review some of his work. It goes by the name of Shaun Rose. Now, if anybody's been following me, which you should, you'll know that I have done some things for some independent filmmakers in the past. Trailer reactions, film reviews, some stuff like that. I've dealt with Jason Pitts, a very good independent filmmaker who is making strides in that world and is looking to do his first big-time full feature-length film, hopefully in the next coming year. He's got the screenplay is actually available right now on Amazon Prime to buy. So there's that. I deal with Acrostar Films. I've done a bunch of stuff with them, trailer reactions, film reviews for quite a few of their things, and hope to do more in the future. And you guys have seen me on the Compelled by Schlock YouTube channel. A couple of really good guys to deal with. They're starting to dabble into their own little independent filmmaking world. They've got Teddy Bear, which will be coming out hopefully in the next few months, and we'll have some more information about that. So I do some things for the independent filmmakers when I'm asked, and Shaun Rose came across my channel, messaged me, and asked me if I would do a film review of his work. And I said sure. So that's what we're going to get into today. This guy, Shaun Rose, lives in New York, I guess, judging by the films. But let's take a quick look at the trailer for the first film. We're going to talk about three of them today. He's got three that I want to go over for sure. Now let's talk about the first one. It's called Upstate Story.
Do you hate weekdays? Do you ever yearn for your past? Are you eager for your weekends to come? Then maybe you can relate to.
So as you can tell from the trailer, Upstate Story doesn't have a high production value. And as a disclaimer, I say this in just about every video that I do for independent filmmakers. It's easy for you as the audience to be cynical about independent films when you really shouldn't be. Doing this type of work for these guys has really shown me how hard it is to make something as far as any type of independent film goes, and it's given me a greater appreciation for the work and dedication that these guys have to their art. That being said, Upstate Story, production value or not, it is by far, large in part, one of the most relatable stories you will ever come across in any type of independent or even in a major production cinematic feature. It is large in part that relatable. Any guy, and even some women that are 20 to 30 years old, will be able to relate to this film, especially if you're from my generation and did a lot of the stupid things as a younger adult. This film, hands down, is super relatable. There's no other word for it. And I don't know that that's exactly what Shaun was going for when he came up with this concept for Ellis and what Ellis has to deal with on a daily basis throughout the course of a week. But it is super relatable. It is actually pretty funny. It's got a really good arc of humor, I guess. The film is supposed to be a little bit... it's almost an autobiographical film of Shaun's life. The more he got into doing Upstate Story, the more real it became, and became a reflection of his own personal issues that he was dealing with. But he's able to make it extremely relatable and entertaining with the humor that he puts in to the movie. It's completely narrative. There's not a lot of back and forth dialogue between any type of characters. It's completely narrative as Shaun narrates throughout the course of the film what Ellis is going through. He narrates as Ellis, as it would be. So, granted, production value might not be that great. It's done in black and white, but I think that adds to the overall melancholy of the film, because Ellis he's a depressed character. He is. I hope Shaun is not a depressed human being in real life, but Ellis, as it would be, is a depressed character, and the black and white helps portray that throughout the course of the film. But again, that is hidden behind a lot of humor and relatability with the character and storyline itself. Now, this did really well in the independent film festivals. Shaun submitted it to a number of film festivals, got a lot of accolades, got a lot of awards, and it was a pretty big deal because there was a lot of self-doubt in doing that, which we're going to talk about again in a little bit. But if you're going to watch any three of these that I talk about for Shaun Rose, you should definitely make it Upstate Story, because not only is it a good story, but I think you're going to find that not only can you relate to it, but you're probably going to find that you could put yourself in that same story and feel what Ellis is feeling. It's really well done. It's only an hour long, and I highly recommend it out of these three. The next one I want to talk about, again, is a continuation. It's the sequel to Upstate Story, simply titled Toga.
This is the last you saw of me, Ellis Martin, over 7 years ago. Much in life was left to be desired as I drove off into the unknown. Anywho's. Well, I have a new home now, and I have a new body I'm not too fond of. Both Nyla and Darian have grown like weeds. I have a new exciting job that takes me from home to most recently my local community, including the bad, horrible, and my old neighborhood. A place I once loved. A place I don't even recognize anymore.
So here we find Ellis 7 years later, a little bit more grown up, obviously a different look. And I'll say this: the Toga is the sequel, obviously. Shaun went through a lot of personal trials and tribulations in between Upstate Story and Toga, and again, that comes across in the film a little bit. The biggest difference I would say between these two is that where in Upstate Story, I feel like male or female could probably relate to the scenarios in which Ellis goes through. In Toga, I feel like you're only going to be able to really relate. It's still relatable if you're male or female, but I feel like you're going to be able to relate to it more being a male in his, say, older 30s, younger 40s, because of the stuff that he goes through mentally and physically. It's definitely an eye-opener for what we go through as men. Again, it's really well done. It's black and white. It's done a lot like Upstate Story. It's basically a narrative film. It is a semi-reflection of Shaun's own personal life, and again, dabbled in some humor, some melancholy, and again, relatable, but more towards the male side this time than the female. But nonetheless, it's still very well done. And again, submitted it out on the independent film festival circuit. Didn't do as well as Upstate Story, but still did pretty good. And again, it's just only about an hour long and really interesting to watch. I like the story of Ellis and how it's progressed so far, and I kind of hope Shaun keeps going with this type of work. It's definitely really interesting. You don't see a lot of filmmakers, especially independent ones, do almost a semi-self-biographical type film that's almost a direct reflection of their own personal life, which actually brings us to the third film that he's done. The third film that he's done is called Making and Unmaking, and it actually came out between Upstate Story and Toga. It was right smack in the middle of those two things. And Making and Unmaking isn't necessarily a story about Ellis, but it is a story about Shaun and how he got to the point of making Upstate Story. Doesn't really have anything to do with Toga, but everything to do with Upstate Story. And I really like the title Making and Unmaking because throughout the course of this, basically it's a documentary. Throughout the course of this documentary of Making and Unmaking, you see his thought process and his almost like storyboards of how he wanted to put together a science fiction type story. He was going for something that was completely different and off the wall before coming back to Upstate Story. So there's a making and unmaking of this movie that he wanted to do that turned out would be too complicated for an independent filmmaker, probably too costly, and a lot of hardships to go along with something like that. Basically trying to do something that big as your first film was going to be really tough for Shaun to pull off. So you have the making and unmaking of this science fiction film that he wanted to do, almost like a dreamscape type thing. It sounded really interesting. I would really like to see Shaun try and pull it off in the future. This film that he talks about and the making and unmaking, it sounds really good. But throughout the course of this, not only are you going through this making and unmaking of this film that he wanted to do and then settled on doing Upstate Story, Shaun also dives into the personal details of his life that is basically the making and unmaking of a marriage, the making and unmaking of his health, and the making and unmaking of Upstate moving into what ultimately would be Toga. It doesn't really dive into Toga just yet, but you get to see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff as far as not just what Shaun went through to make the movies, or make the movie, I should say, is Upstate Story. But a lot of the stuff that you don't get to see unless you're really in the in-crowd as far as independent filmmaking goes. You get to see a lot of stuff behind the scenes as far as the actual film festivals, the networking. Shaun talks a lot about, the people that he had to deal with, where the concepts come from, the storyboards, the songs. And when you watch Upstate Story, it's easy, like I said before, it's easy to be cynical about these things because you think that there's not a lot involved. But when you watch Making and Unmaking and the details and the trials and the tribulations that Shaun had to go through, not only with his personal life, but professional life, and then basically the filmmaking life, props to him. There's a lot that goes into making something like a small independent film happen. And Shaun did an amazing job with Upstate Story getting that to happen. And then in Toga, to come back from what he had to go through to put together another film to keep that story going, not just for himself, but for the character of Ellis. Again, he puts himself in a very vulnerable position as a filmmaker and an actor on screen in Toga. He really does. So there's a lot to be said about that. But Making and Unmaking, I don't know if you would watch these as Upstate Story, Toga, and then Making and Unmaking, or if you would watch them in the order that they were made, which would be Upstate Story, Making and Unmaking, and then Toga. But the character of Ellis is specific to Upstate Story and Toga, and then Making and Unmaking is a fantastic documentary that Shaun put together about the process of Upstate Story and just filmmaking in general. And if there's anything that I could take away from something like Making and Unmaking, it goes to show that it's my firm belief that anybody and everybody has an interesting story to tell as far as their own personal life goes. So if you deal with depression or feel like you're not worthy of something or you feel underappreciated, I'm here to tell you that your story is interesting. Your story should be told. You don't have to be a narcissist about it. What Shaun did with Making and Unmaking, I feel like was partially therapeutic for the stuff that he had to go through, physically, mentally, emotionally. Like I said, job, wife, hobby, everything was impacted, and he showcases all of that in Making and Unmaking. And you get to see how and why Upstate Story is so relatable because of the personal trials and tribulations that Shaun had to go through. So props to him for that. It takes a lot for a filmmaker to put themselves out there, but I don't think that I've really come across an independent filmmaker that has done a character quite like Ellis that is almost a direct reflection of what he's gone through or going through. And to do that as an independent filmmaker with a very, very modest budget, but getting friends and family to help you along the way, props to him, man. Shaun, you did a good job. You really did. So I highly recommend, if you're getting into the independent filmmaking or you've thought about trying to make a story or make a film, I would definitely watch Making and Unmaking. It is a very, very good inside look into how the thought process works for Shaun, which maybe you can take some tips and tricks away from. And like I said, you also get a little bit of behind the scenes of what it's like to be at the film festivals, networking within the film festivals, and trying to make stuff happen. It is not easy what these guys do. And like I said, I deal with Jason Pitts, who's done some great independent stuff. Voorhees Night of the Beast, I did a review for him. You should definitely check that out on his YouTube channel. Like I said, he's got a screenplay that's available right now on Amazon Prime. That's going to be his next movie that he's going to do. And then you've got Acrostar Films that I've talked about a lot, and they've got, It Came From Somewhere. Their new one, They Came Back From Somewhere. They've got Corn Zombies getting ready to come out. Desperate Souls, which we did the film review on, the trailer reaction for, and just a lot of stuff going on over there. And then you've got my guys over at Compelled by Schlock, who have done a short film in the past and now are getting ready to do like an independent film with Teddy Bear. I really give props to these guys for going above and beyond and trying to make something like this happen. It is hard work what these guys do. So props to Jason, props to Compelled by Schlock, props to Acrostar Films, and props to Shaun Rose. I'm glad you reached out to me. I hope this video has done you some justice. I hope it gets your name out there a little bit. But I want to say, keep doing what you're doing. You've got a super interesting story in your own personal life. And I hope I get to see that science fiction dreamscape film you talked about in Making and Unmaking. I think you're really onto something there. It's going to be super interesting to see if you can ever make that come to fruition. So, and my people, like, subscribe, and comment to the channel. Feel free to share it. Let me know what you guys think. If you are an independent filmmaker or part of an independent film company and you guys want me to review something or a trailer reaction, by all means, reach out, let me know. I'd be more than happy to watch what you guys have made. I've got a really great appreciation for what independent filmmakers go through, especially on the lower scale, trying to make this stuff happen. So reach out to me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next video.